spite of possibility of bad weather. So anyway, we're glad to have you. Today's topic may sound like, why do we want to talk about bone health? It sounds kind of boring, but very, very important topic. And Craig's going to tell you all about why. And then at the end, I will make our big announcement and tell you about that. So make sure you've signed in where Miss Juliet is right now, signing in so we can get your points recorded. And if you haven't registered already, next week is chair yoga. So let's get going for that. That's another good one. I mean, those are, it's either going to be fun to do in your office. So, team folks, RFW in the chat, and we'll get you set up as well. So, I think it's time to turn it over to Craig so he can educate us on bone health.
Thank you, Miss Allen. Thank you all. I am always so grateful to be able to share with my friends just some of the things I'm learning as a student here at the University of North Alabama. And like Miss Allen said, most of us are health-minded in here. That's why we're here. And I know I'm health-minded, but bone health is not always on my health radar as well. I do think a lot about, do I need to lose some body fat? Do I need to increase some muscle mass? My cognitive health, my heart, my cardiovascular system. However, I don't think much about how healthy my femur is, or my humerus or any of those bones. I don't think much about it, but they're so, so important. And a lot of us, me included, assume that bones are just solid structures. That's it, and they're just going to be here and no problem. But that's not the case. Bones are active, live tissue. They have cells, okay? In fact, they're living, active tissues made of cells that are constantly being broken down and built back up and broken down through a process called bone remodeling, which is a very important term, bone remodeling, as far as building new bones. In fact, a lot of us may know or didn't know that 10% of our skeleton is replaced every year. So about every 7 to 10 years, we got a whole new skeleton because the cells are constantly making new bone and taking bone away. And it's a process we need to talk about real briefly because when we get into talking about some pharmacology for just a brief second, we'll need to know these cell names. So basically, we get a brand new skeleton. Now, as children, this happens a lot quicker. And we'll talk about why kids grow more bones and don't have bone problems like adults do. So I'm not going to nerd out too bad on you, but it does have to do with bone cells, and they're all important. These two right here, osteogenic cells and osteocytes, they indirectly help with these right here. These are the two we're going to kind of discuss because they're important to know. One is called osteoblast. Don't have to remember that, but remember it's got the B in it. B stands for build for us. Osteoblasts build bones. They're just cells that help build new tissue. And also important, believe it or not, are osteoclasts, which break bone down. And they're very important. They sort of have a negative connotation because they break bone down, but it's a part of that bone remodeling process. It's very important. It's kind of like if a carpenter is going to do a repair on some wood, he's got to sand it down, or she's got to sand it down before they can start to put the wood back together. So that's a part of the osteoclast. Very important. And so this is kind of a good visual. Osteoclast right there comes by and breaks the bone down. This is happening in us right now. Kids, older people, just adults, regular people. This is happening, and then the osteoblasts are coming and they're building that bone, sanding it down and building it. And we'll talk about why that's important and where the problem's at. Human bone remodeling cycle, okay? So when we're young, we all know that we're just building bone. Every year we're building more bone than we're losing. And briefly, why? Hormones. Hormones are always behind the curtain of anything we talk about, particularly growth hormone and estrogen. And this applies for men too. A lot of people don't know it, but testosterone converts to estrogen. And estrogen is very important for men as well because estrogen helps with bones for all of us. So growth hormone, remember those cells that we don't want to really remember, but one's got a B in it, one's got a C? Osteoblast, build, osteoclast, I like to say chip away, okay? They break the bone down. Well, growth hormone, which we secrete a lot when we're young, It helps activate what's called osteoblast, bone builders. Now, we still need those osteoclasts. They're very important as well. However, estrogen, males and females, so important because it kind of suppresses the osteoclasts. Doesn't keep them at all, but it keeps them from being too many of them. So that way we got more osteoblasts than we got osteoclasts. And what are we doing? We're building bone, okay, as we should. Kids are building a lot of bone because children are producing a lot of growth hormone and a lot of estrogen. Very important. These two hormones are the reason everything is running the way it should run with the bone health. All right, so let's talk about females for just a second because this is where it really applies. We know that premenopausal females are producing good amounts of estrogen from the ovaries, E2. And so bones are constantly being built, healthy, getting stronger until we hit that certain age where we get to where we're not producing as much E2. We're still producing estrogen. We're producing what's called E1, comes from the fat cells. It's a great estrogen, but it's not as powerful as the E2. And we'll talk about what that means when we talk about bone loss. Okay. So if you'll look right here, this little raindrops here, that's the visual of estrogen. It's also here. So we see at premenopausal estrogen, there's plenty of it, not too much, not too, the Goldilocks effect, right? Not too much, not too little, just right amount. So we got that going on. So what that's doing, these osteoclasts, got a C, so it's chipping away. The osteoclasts that break bone down, it's part of bone remodeling. However, we don't have as many of them. We just got a healthy amount because estrogen is keeping them at bay, keeping them where they're supposed to be. And then when we get to where we're not producing as much of the E2, estrogen from the ovaries, right here you can see not as much estrogen. You see we got more osteoclasts, okay? So you can kind of imagine what's going on with our bones right there, okay? We got more osteoclasts than we do blast, which is the opposite of when we're 9, 10, 11 years old. We've got more osteoblasts. Then we do class. So as you can see, and this is kind of a picture you can just sit and look at for just a second. You wouldn't even need me to say anything. Just look at that picture. That'd be the whole presentation of what's really going on. And as you can also tell here, that's a height, 5'8", 5'6", same person. That's where we see the shortness coming when people lose height. It's really because of this area right here where they're losing bone mass. Very important. So you can kind of see what healthy bone looks like. And remember, my vision of bone, which was wrong, was just like solid material, you know. But if you ever looked at it under a microscope, you would see it's porous. And the more porous, the worse. But it is supposed to be porous. You know, you can see through it. And also, be honest with you, the porousness of a healthy bone also makes it stronger. Okay? The trabecula makes it much stronger. That's too much anatomy right there. Peak bone mass usually in our 20s and 30s. Now this, let me be clear, this is just an average person. I want you to visual this as somebody who does not resistance train. Okay, we're not talking about that cohort. We're talking about just the average person who's just relying on growth hormone, estrogen, other hormones too. Those are just the two I chose to talk about. Most important ones for this conversation. So at 20s and 30s, we're just building more bone than we are losing bone, okay? And what happens when we hit after 30s? And 30s is young, 60 is young, and I would even go and say 70 is young in my vocabulary, okay? The way I'm trying to live life, it is. However, 30 is so young, when we start to see that dip, it's not drastic, so a lot of us won't even notice it, okay? Won't even notice this bone. It's just this bone loss. It's so minute, okay? So again, this is just something to bring us back. It's very important. And the reason I keep wanting to mention osteoblast and osteoclast, if it was any other audience, I'd probably just say bone building cells, bone breaking cells. But when we talk about medications down the road that may be important, you may hear these words later on. You'll know some of these medications directly affect osteoblasts, increase them, activate them. And then some would suppress the osteoclasts, okay? So that's what the medications for bone loss would do. Some of them. There's all kinds. There's even some thyroid calcitonin that also may be taken as well. It just depends on what the doctor thinks. All right, let's look at bone kind of from up close of what's called osteopenia. Hadn't mentioned that yet, or osteoporosis. I don't think I mentioned that yet, which are two things we're going to talk about right now. So osteopenia, low bone density, a warning sign, okay? A good warning sign. And osteoporosis, okay? Now, spoiler alert, I don't want to go too far. If this is the case with somebody, there's still good news we're going to talk about, okay? There's things we can do about that. That is a spoiler alert. I'm going a little bit too far ahead. However, those are scary terms, but they don't have to be, okay? Osteoporosis has no symptoms until fractures occur, okay? No symptoms, meaning unless you get some kind of test, an expensive test that you have to go pay for, unless you got some good insurance and you're a certain age, you'd probably have to go pay for it. If I wanted to go get a certain test to test my bones outside of this university, it would probably cost $200, you know. It's good information, a good investment. However, osteoporosis, to see if I had osteoporosis, would not have any real symptoms up until I had it, okay? Would not. Called the silent disease. A lot of diseases are called silent. Blood pressure, silent. So detection, whatever we're talking about, depending on which Wednesday it is always good, right? Common fractures, very important. And I'll explain why. Many of you all know this. You didn't need me to tell you, but usually the osteoporosis fractures are going to be in what's called the neck of the femur artery, right here. That's when you hear about the hip. Let's just call it hip. Somebody broke their hip. You hear that a lot. Elderly people break their hip. I don't like saying elderly people because what's considered elderly is not old to me. You know, I think it's young. Because I'm nipping at its heels right now. I'm right behind it. So it's at the hip is one area. And the other area is in the spine. We know this. And then the wrist. These are the two I really want to talk about here, though. But that's a good place to measure. The reason why here? Why not the arm? Why not the shin? Why not the whatever bone? This is where the most metabolically active area of those two cells, osteoclast, osteoblast. We see more activity there, okay? And if there's more activity there, less growth hormone, less estrogen at the time, more activity there, we're going to see more bone loss there, okay? So that's real important areas to think about for a second, and we'll talk more about why. So take one more good look at that, and there'll be a reason why here shortly. So just a fact, 1 year after a hip fracture, 1 year after, 33% of people have to go live in some kind of nursing home or assisted living, maybe not permanently, but lose their independence, okay? And I'm not trying to scare or talk doom and gloom, but I'm looking at a good age of people right now that this is an important, very important presentation. As important as anyone we've ever talked about, would have to lose their independence and go get some kind of assisted living. And you know, people that just paid their houses off and, you know, worked really hard, that's something kind of scary right there. They have to leave that. Something even more scarier, but a reality that needs to be discussed, is 20 to 30% of patients will die who had that hip fracture within a year. Mostly due to pneumonia from being sedentary, which is a good word for another presentation, being sedentary, will die because of that hip fracture indirectly and then cause pneumonia. Won't make it out of whatever said hospital or assisted living or nursing home, okay? Very scary. So let's take a look at healthy bone and osteoporosis bone just to kind of get a visual, a good visual, not too minute with a microscope, but then again, I think what my bone looks like when I look at my arm. You see how porous it is, but you can see the difference between the osteoporosis bone, okay? And that's because of those osteoclasts. There's too many of them, okay? Too many of them. Not enough of the osteoblasts. There's not a good balance there, okay? We talked about the problem. Let's talk about the solution. This is where the good news channel comes in right here, and I get to be it. So how bones get stronger, the role of physical activity. anybody's ever been to at least one lunch and lift, you'll know you can repeat the words after the age of 50, really 30, but let's go with 50 because it starts to really show at 50. Muscle and bone, which are business partners, by the way, when one prospers, the other prospers. We talk about muscle all the time, but if we're in business together and I'm out of the office and you make a sweet deal, we both prosper. That's how I look at bones and muscle. They're partners. One gets better, the other one gets better. One gets worse, the other one gets worse. Muscle and bone has to have a reason to stick around after age 50. It's just not going to hang out by itself. It will leave us if we don't give it a reason. One of the best reasons is, and you already know this, and I'm not going to talk about diet much with this because diet can be, people know that you can go take calcium, vitamin D, you can go to Walmart, and you can get that taken care of. I'm going to talk about something we really need to talk about and go out of our way of and bake this into our lifestyle. Strength training, okay, resistance training. And by the way, I use those terms interchangeably. Strength and resistance training, probably I should say resistance training more, but I tend to say strength training so you'll know I'm talking about both. Oh, there we go. So how bones get stronger, what happens is when we lift weights, however you want to look at it, whether they're bands, whether they're weights, whether they're body weight squats, we're giving a load to those bones. It's really better than that. We're sending a signal to our brains, okay? It's all a signal. So we place stress upon these bones, and there will be a result, okay? The stimulation of strength training, going to lunch and lift, going to the SRC, going to the wellness center, going to your favorite gym, going to your favorite room at your house and doing some of these exercises we'll talk about later, have profound results for bone loss, osteoporosis, osteopenia. And even if that's two are the case right now, can reverse it back to another direction, okay? Causing a strengthening those bones through osteoblast, osteoclast. We'll talk about that. But what's important is this right here. It slows age-related bone loss, which is osteoporosis, age-related bone loss. Strength training, if we could bottle it up into a pill, whatever they're giving us for osteoporosis now, wouldn't even touch it. This is the greatest medicine, picking up those dumbbells, okay? Barbells, bands. Reduces our risk of falls, lowers our risk of losing our independence is the outcome of all of this, okay? And we all know that. Strength training. So let's look at a strength training bone, an exercising bone versus somebody who's not. Same person, same bone looks like for this scenario. And as we can see, the bone's a lot more dense. Even looking at a bone from the naked eye view, you can even tell how more dense it is and not as porous as over here. Larger, stronger, thicker. This is a bone that somebody does their strength training a minimum of 2 days a week. So resistance training, the most important exercise for bones. Cardiovascular, getting on the treadmill. If you're doing that, please don't stop. Cardiorespiratory fitness is the #1 determinant of how long we're going to live, so keep doing it, okay? But far as building bones, mitigating osteoporosis, reversing osteoporosis, this is going to be the magic right here. Resistance training, strength training, same thing. According to the ACSM guidelines, American College of Sports Medicine, a minimum of 2 days a week. Now, 2 days a week is the minimum. I would suggest 3. Why not? If we're going to bake it in our lifestyle, you can get some more benefits for your muscles, better body composition. Why not? But that's a small price to pay if you think about it. 2 days a week is a bare minimum. That's what American College of Sports Medicine has taught us through research. 2 days a week, small price to pay. 20, 30 minutes, depends on. Not limiting to that, but just generally speaking, 20, 30 minutes, 15 maybe, depends on your intensity, depends on your workout, depends on your time. Anything's better than nothing. A lot of depends is the answer we've learned as students. We hear that word a lot, depends, from our professors, and they're so right to teach us that. So a minimum of 2 to 3 days a week. That's not much at all. Making sure we're hitting all muscle groups, particularly what's called multi-joint compound movements. If you're working your chest, you're not just working your chest most of the time. Most of the time, you're working shoulders and triceps. It's a compound movement. You're talking about stimulating a lot of osteoblasts. It's exactly what it's doing, okay? And I'll talk about how that works here in a second. Working your back, not skipping a muscle group. We can just keep it simple, okay? Not just going there and doing my favorite ones. And I do have my favorite ones as well, but I still try to do the ones that, that I need to do the most. And legs. Why legs? Well, what's our mobility? What's what really, I don't walk on my arms, even though I want them to look big. I don't walk on them. I don't use them as much. They're still important. But working the legs, squats, lunges, leg presses, all kinds of good exercises we can talk about as well. Working all muscles. And arms are important, but I put them at the last because when you work your chest, multi-compound movements, when you work your back, you're working your arms. So hit those first. Strength training, resistance training, especially effective building muscles. Pulling on bones signals strong. Don't ever, try not to look at lifting weights as how we used to look at it. Look at it as I'm going in there and I'm going to tell my brain to lay down new tissue. I'm taking my medicine. Okay? Some people have to take that medicine like this. We can go in that gym and take our medicine 2 days a week. Okay? The only side effects is your muscles will get bigger. Not a bad side effect. Lose a little body fat. Good for your heart. Not to get off on a different presentation, but people who have more muscle mass have less cancer. Okay? Muscle is a hostile environment for tumor cells. Okay? Muscle is anti-tumorigenic. And people who get cancer and have good muscle mass have a large increase in survival rate compared to somebody who doesn't have muscle mass. Muscle and bone are business partners, so I can talk about muscles a little bit here. One prospers, the other prospers. Okay? Just like business. Examples, and y'all know this, free weights. Always going to be number one for me if you can do it. They are, to me, the best because you got more range of motion. If done correctly and you know what you're doing, you do. Free weights are, to me, the best. Depends on who we're talking about, though, because resistance bands might be the best for somebody else. Okay, depends. Resistance machines, always great. Just go hit them. Just go push, go pull. Okay. 2 best times to work out and lift weights. When are they? Some of y'all know this. 2 best times to go take your medicine. When you want to and when you don't want to. And I would argue maybe the best of those is when you don't want to. I've never left the gym feeling worse than I did when I walked in. Never. I always felt better. Something about them old endorphins or something. I don't know. Ain't got that far in life yet. Bodyweight squats are perfect. Okay. Now, anybody that knows me knows I'm big on squats. If I can get you in there to do squats under the big girl, big boy rack, I'm going to safely show you how to do it. Keep your mobility for the rest of your life. However, I don't ever want anybody to ever listen to me talk and think that bodyweight squats do not have a lot of utility. They do. Even for me, somebody who does squats, so good for you because I'm giving that stimulus. Okay. In fact, I would argue if you're not doing squats, I would start with those before you did anything else. Okay. Very, very good. Okay. It's medicine. Let's start looking at it as medicine. Go take my medicine. So, not to get too mechanistic, because I don't want to get myself in trouble and mess up. It's the reason why. But this is how taking our medicine is down there at the gym. What happens is when this lady is pulling on that weight, in actuality, there's a message being sent from whatever muscle, probably around in here. Let's just say that one's being worked pretty good right there. Goblet squats. All the way to her brain, okay? And indirectly, not directly, I mean, it would take a bunch of slides to show what's really going on mechanistically, but however, the outcome is all we care about in here. The outcome is going to be more osteoblasts, okay? Even if we're producing more osteoclasts because of less estrogen, this will make more osteoblasts. Bring that balance back up, okay? And remember, Big Pharma, which I'm for, they save a lot of lives, but they're selling this osteoblast and osteoclast, and we need that. I hope you understand what I'm saying. You can go down there at that gym and get it also. And sometimes we need to couple them together. Use one as an adjunct. That's the case for a lot. However, osteoblast right here. Here's that bottle right here that if we could If they could put this in a pill, they would already have done it. Okay. BMD stands for bone mineral density. That's something we'll talk about here shortly. Lunch and lift. Now, what presentation would not have a plug in for lunch and lift? We got our days on there, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Now, this come from a flyer. It was made this summer before we got Demetrius with us. And we got Demetrius Witt right there with us, and he's instructing right now. What we're trying to do is I'm going to start handling people working with people who's never worked out before, who just wants that basics. And for some of you all that's more advanced, it's been coming. I'm not going to point any names out, but I'm looking at some of y'all who's there all the time. Some of you all want to work with Demetrius and kind of he's going to turn it up a notch from what we were doing. But this is a great place to come and work out. Now, I am trying to sell this to you because you're working out and you're getting paid for it. I've heard some people say, I don't have time after work. This is why we're all on the clock. Even if we're on salary, we're still on the clock. We get a good workout. Somebody help me out over here. In about, 20, 30 minutes, I'd say good 20 minutes we're doing it because we're putting our little stuff up. The biggest thing I think is we're getting away from our desk. We're walking to we've been sitting all day. We're walking over there to the SRC, getting that in. If you've been over there, you know that we're using some of our steps. We're just moving muscles, okay? We're just contracting skeletal muscles. So I don't look at it as just when Demetrius says, let's start. We done started when we got up from our desk. That's when we started lunch and lift. And we really don't finish until we get back to our seats. So much utility, I could say there. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, 12:30 to 1, we can talk more about the solution of osteoporosis, osteopenia, building muscle, whatever you want to talk about. We talk about these while we're working out. We explain the why and the how. And here's a list of things that we believe lunch and lift classes do, as you can see, and I won't go down the list because I don't need to. And most of all, we're going to protect our bones. We're going to make our muscles look good. We're burning some fat. We're making ourselves feel better. And when skeletal muscles contract, they produce pharmacy for our bodies. We know that. The byproducts, muscles contracting while I'm walking, guess what we don't get enough of? Our medicine. Our body's on pharmacy because we don't move enough. So there we go right there. That's one of the solutions. And here's sort of our big news. Many of you know this, many of you not. The kinesiology department, which is great here, has gotten a DEXA in the lab. And this is huge. Some people may not know what it is. There was a time I didn't either, but once I learned what one is, it's huge that we have a DEXA. So grateful for this. This is really big, particularly since the wellness gets to use it too for our Roar for Wellness. I'm sure there'll be a lot of research in the future cranked out, but there'll also be some utility for the Roar for Wellness people. Because prevention and detection and screenings are always number one. Okay, knowing this so we can head it off. Because remember, it's one of the many silent diseases out there. So what is DEXA? And y'all got to forgive me. I got one of those slides shouldn't be on there. I didn't take the first one off. So DEXA is a gold standard for bone density, or BMD. How thick are our bones? How dense are they? How healthy are they? We can tell with this. In fact, this is what an orthopedic doctor would use to diagnose osteoporosis, osteopenia. That's what they look at. Same thing. And this looks exactly like the one that our professors in the kinesiology department got for us. So very proud of this. Very proud of this. Gold standard for bone strength detects bone loss early, or in some cases gives us good news. It's not always doom and gloom when you get a screening now. I've seen a lot of people leaving these and surprised how healthy their bones are. Of course, spoiler alert, they usually strength train and resistance train. They go to the gym. So there is a reason this stuff works. Okay, it's not theory. Okay, it's evidence-based. Provides accurate and reliable results. Yes, it does. Helps prevent, diagnose, treatment of osteoporosis. Very important. Allows clinicians to monitor changes. Get them. Particularly if you're a faculty member and employee here, getting these annually as a part of a Roar for Wellness membership. Get to see how we're improving. I'm not going to say how much we're going down because you guys are going to go to lunch and lift or you're going to start doing your body weight squat, so I'm not even going to go there. We're going to say how much you improve, okay? And also, I don't care if somebody's 98 years old or older. Strength training, resistance training has showed through research to increase both muscle and bone, okay? It's never too old, okay? It's kind of like saving for retirement, though. When do you want to start doing that? Well, ideally, your first paycheck, but who done that, right? Not me. However, same thing with this. We do want to start saving, putting in our bone mineral density, start putting our muscle on as early as we can, okay? That we do want to do, okay? Just like retirement. Uses very low radiation, very low. In fact, the guy that installed it was telling me all about it. He was telling me being in an airplane, I can't even remember the numbers, was like so much more. So it's like really so low, so minute. It's not like a CT scan or MRI where you don't want to get one of those all the time. All right, this is what one of your printouts would look like from the DEXA that they got us from the kinesiology department. This is mine, okay? Some of y'all have had it, I've seen in here, so y'all recognize this. This is an easy to read printout, and then there's some stuff that can be very easily interpreted. So we could talk about that as well, but this tells you a lot right here. Now, the DEXA does two things. Its primary use for the DEXA is to diagnose osteoporosis. Now, to be honest with you, not everybody, not every cohort, you wouldn't want a 22-year-old male or female does not need an osteoporosis test, okay? It's got other utility I'll talk about here in a second for everybody. However, the number one primary purpose would be to diagnose osteoporosis, but it also does whole body composition too. So there's two things we can do with this. And this is what mine was. I didn't get an osteoporosis. Mine did my whole body. And remember, the osteoporosis test would do just two areas, the neck of the femur artery and the spine. You look at both of those because that's where the two metabolically active areas, osteoclast, osteoblast, they're real active right there. So if we do have a lot of osteoclast going on for whatever reason, that would where it would show up, okay? So we measure those there, can do an osteoporosis test. Now, we do not diagnose nobody with nothing. We just tell you what suggests, okay? Anything we tell you, or at least I tell you, I'm just suggesting, okay? There's your warning label if it comes from me. I just suggested it. So also, two things, and we could talk about this later on, like another time, is T-scores and Z-scores, but they're pretty cool. A T-score is what you'll get, and it tells you how you fare next to, if you're a female, a 20-year-old female, okay? Or if you're a male, how, like I've got mine for a total body, I've got mine, how I score next to a 20-year-old male, okay? Tells me my score. And a Z-score tells us how we fare next to somebody our age, male or female, okay? Pretty cool. And body composition, of course, if you do the total body, you can get your body fat, pretty accurate, and your muscle mass, okay? Now, the muscle mass, I'll go ahead and tell you, you do kind of have to jump through a fiery hula hoop. It's a calculation, but we can get that done pretty quick. But the rest of it's pretty explanatory on that sheet. And then here's the total body comp. Real quick, this is who needs to get osteoporosis. All women over 65 suggested, and get routine screenings also, maybe yearly or as much as you can, okay, as often as you can. Now, women under 65 that are post-menopausal still risk of factors present. They're there, and risk factors, fractures, long-term steroid use, using asthma drugs, okay? It's got cortisol in it. There can be a risk there, and I won't go into that, but there can be. That's what that means right there, steroid use. Low body weight, smoking, of course, causes that. So if somebody is female, under 65, and falls into that, osteoporosis test. For men, no routine screening, okay? Particularly because men don't have that drastic drop in estrogen, because we never had a lot of it. But testosterone converts to estrogen, and even though men lose that testosterone as well, we still don't lose that much estrogen. So we don't have that spike in estrogen, E2 actually, that we're going to need that bone loss. But it happens with men. It does. Just more important for females, okay? And then elderly men over 70, yes, get one. Men 50, 60, and then all adults any age. But I would suggest, if you'll ask me, I would look in the individual and tell them would I get the osteoporosis or the total body one if they were me. Any questions? And I'm sorry if I went too long. Yes, ma'am. Yes, I can back up. Depends on the population. Okay. And so if it was a female over 65, all women over 65, routine screenings. Yeah, why not? If you got access to one. Okay. Is that right? Every 2 years. I did not know that. Yeah. Yeah. Probably than most then. Yeah.
Because I know I had mine. Right, I thought it was, yeah, our coverage starts at 60.
Mm-hmm.
Starts at 60 and every other year. Every 2 years. I've been doing it since 50. I've had 3. My coverage is
Okay.
2 years. I had it since I was that age too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was.
I guess it might depend. Huh? Don't everything. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, 45, 40, but insurance won't pay for it. Yes, that's right. You were so right. And you know, colon cancer is something ideally we should never die of. We just shouldn't. It's the number 3 cancer death. But we shouldn't because you get a colonoscopy, you see that polyp. If you get it at 40, like you said, that's so right, then the odds are you may have those precancerous polyps. But it takes so long for them. You got so much time if you'll get them detected. So ideally in a perfect world, which we'll never live in, by the way, we should never die of colon cancer because of that screening. So that's a great point right there. Early detection, everything. Yes, ma'am.
There are drugs called reclass.
Uh-huh.
I guess that drug would be for the class.
Yeah, probably.
Rather than the blast.
Yes, ma'am. It would probably suppress. I know the re.
Your bone gets, would it tell you whether you need the blast or the class?
No, and that's a great question, but that's where, you know, these expert orthopedics and the doctors, they know the difference in the drugs. Yes, ma'am. I just know they exist. Like calcitonin is one I know I've seen. Calcitonin is produced by the thyroid. When you have extra calcium from your diet, calcitonin tells your body to store it. When we have less calcium in our diet, said I wasn't going to mention diet, but I am. When we're not getting enough calcium, parathyroid hormone brings it from our bone because we got to have calcium to move muscles and we got to have calcium for action potentials. So you'll bring it from storage. And you don't want to do that. So those two hormones. So I've seen those as pharmacological interventions. Those two drugs. I don't know when though. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Craig.
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Very informative. Thank you. And so Craig showed you the picture of the DEXAs, and we had that in the last note. That's a part of our big announcement. And the second half of that is I'm just so pleased to be able to say there's been a select group of us testing it out and giving the GA some experience. They were all trained. When was that?
Like in October, I think.
Yeah, that an expert came in,
Mm-hmm.
and did some training. Dr. Dillon was trained, as well as a select group of GAs, and of course they needed people to practice on. So there are a few of us, some of you in this room also, and we've had ours done. So now, I'd like to open that up. I'm very pleased to be able to open that up to the wellness program. This is for anyone who is a part of Wellness. And our appointments, you'll need an appointment for this, and we want to do it separate from file screenings because of the time. But we will begin. Craig and I just actually discussed yesterday a new day because of Heart Month and doing some things there. But we will actually begin taking appointments Monday, February 16th. And there'll be some communication coming out about this and how you can sign up and what you need to do to prepare and that type of thing. One, you'll have the option, the full body
Mhm.
is actually pretty quick. It's the other one, which if you are in,
Give me a show.
in the more high risk area,
Which one is that?
we strongly encourage that you do
Go
that.
back.
And like we were talking about with
Go back
insurance,
one.
like
Right
our
there.
plan is actually ahead of, well, you can move that slide, but, even though it's 65 in terms of that national recommendation, our group plan, and of course it can vary from group to group, I pay for it at 60, below that, depends on some risk factors and things like that. And I have to tell you my story. So I had my annual appointment usually in the first part of January, on the 5th, to be exact. In to the room, and the nurse was saying, I didn't have DEXA. Tell me what's going on. You know, you don't meet the requirement. Did something happen? Did you fall? And I said, no. In our wellness program, in our lab, we have a DEXA that we just got. And she was like, where do you work? I said, the University of North Alabama. She was like, wow, that is awesome. So, you know, you don't find that at many schools, and especially as part of a wellness program. So we are edge. So I'm just so thankful and grateful to kinesiology. There's a grant, and part of that's for research, and then also the use of it. So we'll be sending out some information. So y'all are the first to know this. So be on the lookout for that and how you can sign up. We will have a private group through Campus Group for you to register and do that. So I'm missing anything. Okay. All right. So that's what's coming. And then Craig and I talked about February 1st starts heart month, of course, and we will have blood pressure checks going on. This time we're coming to you, and we're going to be in different buildings, not every single building across campus, but we're going to kind of centralize it to where, you know, if you're in Kramer Way, you'll come over here to GC. That's, you know, convenient. So we're going to try to, I know we have a lot of construction going on at the lab, and so you don't have to come over for that. Of course, for the DEXA you do, because that's where it's located. That's not a machine that can just be, here, move this over here today. So anyway, be on the lookout for that, and make sure you're getting your blood pressure checked. And secondly, as a part of February announcements, in addition to Heart Month, so we won't have a lot of our Heart Month activities, but we're going to have a lot of education, of course, going on in this February's Heart Month, so we don't want to lose sight of that. But we will also launch on February 2nd, so you'll see some information next week about that, a mental health challenge. So we'll be working on that all through the month, and be sure to look at your email, because there will be a portion of that challenge that will lead to recognition at the awards in April. So that's all I'm going to say at this point. So questions? Yes.
You get your blood pressure checked, you get your steps.
Yes, yes. And don't you love Craig's plug about lunch and lift? I always appreciate him doing that. And we've added Demetrius to teaching as well. So yeah, I mean, you get your 2 days a week if you can just come and do that. But if you can't, I know, yeah, everybody's got circumstances you can't necessarily do. Just get in somewhere. But Craig and Demetrius are wonderful instructors, and help fight this bone loss issue with that. All right, anything else? All right, well, thank y'all so much, and maybe the rain hasn't started yet, so stay dry.